Thank you for tuning into the Radicards podcast on radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Greeno, and today we have Ryan Daly joining us, and we will be talking about some current events in baseball. It's been a while since we've gotten together and talked current
It's been about,
events.
2 weeks, I think, just because of scheduling and traveling conflicts, unfortunately.
Right. So we're going to go over kind of some of the highlights that have taken place over the last 2 weeks and just get right into it here. First thing, biggest news is the 2018 Bowman Chrome Superfractor Auto Ohtani has finally been pulled, but it was pulled on the same day that he was sent to the DL for a strain in his right UCL.
Yeah.
It's unconfirmed whether or not he will be needing Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
But it is, it's still a significant card regardless. A lot of people give the owner a hard time because they say, he's the unluckiest guy because he pulled the card right when Ohtani was sent down to the DL. And I'm like, that's kind of cheap to take a shot like that at the puller. Like, what a great card to own regardless of what happens.
They're just jealous.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to that, right? Is like jealousy.
Yeah, definitely
is a
jealous.
Big deal. It's a big deal. So, really, that card is very significant and pulled in not the greatest of timing. We can make that argument fine, but still a fantastic card to own, man. And he's not sure what he's going to do with it. What he knows for certain, he's going to have it graded BGS, and then he's going to consider the selling piece of it after, I guess. So, kind of unfortunate that we have such a great two-role phenom who's being sent down to the DL with some elbow problems.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, not only for Angels fans, but just for the baseball world in general. I mean, he was so influential and he was so dominant on the mound and behind the plate, and not to mention the hobby impact he had. I mean, his cards were just selling for record numbers, and he was causing these fairly normal Topps products to just fly off the shelves at Targets and Walmarts around the country.
Gosh, yeah.
And everyone was hunting for him. And it's such an odd kind of dark coincidence that the Superfractor was pulled on the same day.
No kidding, right?
But so I guess they're going to give him like stem cell treatment on his elbow, and they're going to reevaluate him in 3 weeks. And so that was about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess now we're talking, 2 weeks time. But I think most people are thinking Tommy John is more than likely, unfortunately.
And you know what? Seriously, May was a great month to watch Ohtani sales. I mean, I had a lot of fun watching this stuff, and I was never able to get my hands on any of the mega box stuff. But by the time that came out, I kind of didn't really care because all of the cards that are worth owning really came out of the Bowman Chrome hobby stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wasn't really upset that I couldn't get my hands on any of the mega box stuff, but it was ardently pursued by collectors and flippers alike. A lot of money was turned at hands last month for that stuff, and it's been a lot of fun covering those sales, just seeing them kind of really come up. And if he gets Tommy John, he's going to be out until the 2020 season, which means that his market value is going to go down very quickly. So for those of us that want a nice piece, nice card, that'll work in our favor because a lot of this stuff will be available at, I think, at least partially more acceptable numbers. We're not going to see 5 figures for autographs probably after that point. You could probably get your hands on the Bowman Chrome base auto for quite a bit less, somewhere in the 3-figure mark, I would assume. I don't know. It seems seems like the trajectory that happens if players not playing, then they're not performing, which means that people aren't seeking out their cards in real time as it's happening because they're recovering. But the question is, because he's a 2-role player, he pitches and hits. The question is, because he pitches right and hits left, or bats left, rather, his pitching arm is not his dominant hitting arm, which means he could hit, what during recovery, but you know, I don't know if the Angels are even going to risk that, having him out there
Yeah,
recovering,
I mean,
paying so much for
I've
him.
seen that idea. I've seen that idea floated around. Um, but I'd be really surprised given how young players are babied in the major leagues these days. Every injury they're overly cautious about everything. And I think it just seems kind of like against your ultimate goal to give him this radical surgery and then throw him out there a couple months later and have him hit, regardless or not of whether or not his right elbow is going to be impacted by him hitting. It's like, what if he's running the bases and he takes a slip, or anything can happen when you're out there playing baseball. And I think he's such a hot commodity. He's a huge investment. I would just shut him down. If you have to give him TJ, just shut him down offensively as well.
Yeah, so I'm right there with you. I'm one of those guys that's like, better, what do they, err on the side of caution, like.
Yeah, safe than sorry. I mean, it's a simple thing to me, but I don't own a baseball team, so who knows?
Right. I mean, if I were a manager, I'd be like, take a seat, recover 100%, then when you come
Yeah,
back, we'll utilize both your talents again.
exactly. Yeah,
No
take your time.
sense.
He's still young. He's what? He's 23? Yeah, so he'll be fine when he'll come back. He'll be, you know, even more in his prime physically speaking. I would just shut him down, which is really hard to say as an Angels fan. It was so much fun watching him for
Right.
those, 2.5 months. But I think it's a really harsh reality that you have to face with this guy. And they sort of knew that he was a little fragile when they first signed him. He had some sort of elbow issue. There wasn't a whole lot of reporting on it, but it was known. And I think the team still sort of had faith in him. And obviously a lot of teams were pursuing him. So it's a bummer. And I'm really curious to see what happens with the card sales because he's such a unique player.
Right.
And it's sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity to get his rookie cards.
Right.
And but I think you're right. I think they'll drop, but they won't drop to a super affordable level. But they might drop to, like you said, like a 3-figure kind of mark for his base auto.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, those red refractor autos, number to 5, those are probably still going to command serious numbers, but they were selling $30,000 and $35,000. I don't know if it's that we're going to see those high, 5 figures again for any of this stuff. But who knows what will happen? I just know that he has markets all over the world. He's desirable in different markets, and so
Yeah.
that's going to help draw figures regardless of how healthy he is.
Yeah, that's another thing that you have to consider is that a lot of the prospects that we talk about on this podcast are really only pursued by people in the Western market, specifically the United States. And since Ohtani is such a global figure, I mean, the collectors in Japan, I have no idea what's going through their mind, whether or not they care if he's hurt. I think he's like the Elvis of Japan right now, and I don't really know if they care that he's going to be sidelined for a year and a half. They might still continue to buy his cards at a premium. But you're right, it's a global market for him, unlike some of the other prospects we're seeing right now.
Right. And I'd like to grab some, low serial numbered parallel of his at some point. And I'm typically impatient enough to wait out the buzz and the spike, until the market has maybe focused their attention elsewhere for some reason or another, whether it be the Tommy John surgery or an up and coming prospect, et cetera. So I'd like to eventually get my hands on something of his because presently I don't own anything of his right now, and there's so many great pieces out there through the different products that have been released. So anyway, sad news for him, but we definitely look forward to his recovery and, hope that he can see a fast recovery, but a very necessarily timed one. Like, don't rush it, So
Yeah,
really
exactly.
cool that the superfractor was pulled. Uh, Regardless of what happens, what a great card to have. Just a fantastic card to own. The Ohtani 2018 Bowman Chrome Superfractor was pulled, months in, right? Like weeks and weeks and weeks went by, nothing, and all of a sudden we get it, and it's the DL. But
Yeah.
so Bowman had been out for a long time. But when 2018 Finest came out, it wasn't 24 hours that had passed after release date that the Superfractor Auto Ohtani card from that product was pulled and then listed on eBay for $60K, and was eventually, I think, sold for $45,000. I'd have to double check the numbers, but is no longer available. It didn't last very long.
Right. Yeah.
So whatever the case is, that some argue like, well, that drops the SRP of that product. Well, yeah, I get that, but he's got 3 superfractors in that product. 3. He's got the superfractor with the auto, the superfractor without the auto. He's got this the Finest First insert set. He's got a superfractor in that, and they've all been pulled and found or sold already. So it hasn't been that long since Finest has been out, and the biggest 3
No.
cards in the set have already been sold, and they're accounted for. And so really interesting stuff that happened. Like, we waited so long for the Bowman Chrome Auto, and that product was opened like rigorously by the collecting
Oh, yeah.
community. It was opened crazily. And looking on eBay, there's like, you can buy bricks of the Ohtani base card from Bowman prospects, bricks of them, like for whatever cost. Like, people are selling lots of sets, and there's like just so much floating around the market and no superfractor, and all of a sudden it's pulled. But it took so long. And then we have this other product that comes out in less than 24 hours, superfractor's pulled. It's just like really extreme to me.
It is extreme.
It's extreme.
And, the Finest is so much more expensive of a product. I mean, the Bowman and the Bowman Chrome are so much more accessible. They're sold at Target, they're sold at Walmart,
Right.
your local hobby shop, etc. And like you said, people were just ripping through those packs ravenously, looking for the Ohtani stuff, and it took so long, and it took so much product being sold. And 2018 Finest comes out, and there you go. So
It's crazy.
it's very odd.
It's very odd.
Yeah, it is odd.
I mean, it's an interesting set of circumstances. We have the Bowman Chrome's pulled the day he's sent a DL. Finest comes out less than 24 hours, the superfractor's pulled.
Boom.
It's so
Yeah.
weird to me to think that these like extreme circumstances are taking place. Finest is a great looking product, though. I like the design. I won't buy any of it, but I think it's a great product. I mean, I like the design. It's the refractors look nice. The superfractors are amazing as always. Just a good looking product. So anyway, moving on. You wanted to talk about Miles Mikolas.
Yeah, so Miles Mikolas is sort of an interesting cat right now. He's maybe not the ace for the Cardinals, but he's definitely like top 2 or 3 pitchers for the St. Louis Cardinals right now. And he sort of has a Japanese connection in that he was drafted several years ago, I think, by the Padres, and for whatever reason, he couldn't get it together, and he ended up playing in Japan, like a lot of guys do from the States. But what doesn't happen usually is that they don't come back from Japan to play in the MLB. They usually stay in Japan and they retire, and that's it. And so he's one of those rare cases where he came back and he's had a lot of success. I think he's like 7-2 right now. I mean, his WHIP is under 1, which is insane. You talk about guys with WHIPs under 1, like Pedro Martinez. He used to do that on a regular basis. And that's obviously a great comparison to have if you're being compared to Pedro Martinez.
Yeah.
And from a hobby standpoint, it's really interesting because when he was first drafted, he didn't have enough traction to even be on like a Bowman prospect kind of product. So he really has no cards out there except for these odd like Japanese cards. And the Topps Now and the Topps Living kind of product have featured him, but it's hard to find him anywhere else. And it's kind of surprising to see for such a dominant player at this point in the season, he's not really featured a whole lot in the hobby. So I don't really know what you would buy if you want to invest in Miles Mikolas. But he's got a really bright future. He's older than most, quote unquote rookies, but he's probably going to have several years of success ahead of him.
Yeah, so that's interesting because we'll be talking about Derek Rodriguez here later on, and he is also found in very little product, but he just came up with the San Francisco Giants as a pitcher, who is Ivan Rodriguez's son.
Mm-hmm.
There have been other Derek Rodriguez's, so make sure to look for the spelling when you're looking for the actual one who's Ivan Rodriguez's son.
Yes, please be careful because when I first Googled him, I found another Derek Rodriguez.
Right. And, there was a guy online that was selling the superfractor of Derek Rodriguez, but the other Derek Rodriguez, and I think he timed it correctly. So he's like, hoping that someone would slip up and like, oh, I got Derek Rodriguez, super, like wrong Derek, dude, sorry. But he's also not
Derek.
found in anything. He doesn't have any Bowman anything. He's got some like Panini Elite stuff from like years ago.
Right.
But he's not in anything. But we'll get to that later. But with Miles, I haven't really followed him at all, and it's nice to hear that there are these like kind of random players that are performing exceedingly well in the hobby. And there's so many guys every year that are up and comers, and they have a spike in performance to talk about, like, is this going to be a long-term thing? So hopefully we'll be able to see him highlighted in some product, throughout the year or, in the coming years. And, we'll hear more discussion around him.
Yeah, I'm curious to sort of see how Topps handles it, because as far as I know, they haven't released an official RC card with the RC emblem on it.
Right.
But he's 29. He's played in the majors before, very limited, so he hasn't really like qualified for the rookie status. So this would be his rookie year officially, and I'm just curious to see how they handle that, because he's a popular player, at least amongst the St. Louis fan base. And he's got a shutout. He's, like I said, his whip is under 1, which is pretty insane.
Right.
And I mean, everything's looking up for this guy. So I hope that Topps is able to feature Miles a little more on their products.
Yeah, I mean, if he plays like, he's a regular, played throughout the year and next year, whatever. I mean, it's almost a certainty we'll see him in other products. But
I hope so.
Ronald Acuna is another prospect that, if you're listening and you're probably aware of. He has been, his cards have been selling exceedingly well in the market over the last, all this year, really. And late last year, he was in 2017 Bowman Chrome. You can find some autos in there of him, pre-rookie year stuff. All very expensive. So he's
very expensive.
So he's another guy who's really come along and really driven some hobby excitement. Plays for the Atlanta Braves, and he actually got injured. So he's injured and Ohtani's injured. It's just like really upsetting. But
yeah, two of the biggest prospects. I mean,
yeah,
it's really bad, and especially because the Braves, as a team, they're such a young team, and they're sort of overachieving at this point in the season. I don't know the standings in the NL East off the top of my head, but I think they're in first, maybe second.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing really well, and it really sucks to see Acuna, go down like that. And I watched the video a few times of his injury. It did not look good.
So for those of you who don't know, what happened was his left leg caught after running past first, and he hyperextended his knee and fell and hurt his back. I mean, the fall wasn't nearly as bad looking as the knee torque, because you can slow-mo see that knee torque out like that, and it's not good. Very unpleasant. The knee is a very fragile joint, and you have to do everything you can to finesse the quality of your knee in every way you can to ensure that it ensures longevity, because the knee is something that's under impact every day. And so really upsetting to see that. I hope he recovers quickly. But my question is, how is this going to affect card sales? I don't know. Okay, so the knee thing, to me, and I'm not a physician. I don't claim to be, but um, the question is, will the knee recovery take longer or around the same time or less the amount of time as a Tommy John recovery? See, to me, I feel like it's gonna be a lot less time, but then again, I don't study medicine.
I would say it's good. It's definitely going to take less time. However, like I said, the Braves are a young team,
Right.
and I think it would behoove them to be very overly cautious with this player.
Mm-hmm.
He's a future sort of franchise player, and just because they happen to be overachieving now in the month of June, I wouldn't try and rush him back into the fold. Um, just because, like you said, the knee is a very sensitive part of your body, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to let that heal. Um, and I really don't think the Braves management was expecting the success that they're having right now.
Mm.
So, I would just be cautious with this guy because, like I said, he's going to be a future star for the team. And if you rush him back out and he, irritates the knee again, who knows?
Right. Well, it's like that. The Ohtani. You don't bring him back until he's 100% recovered. Same with
Right.
Acuna. You don't bring Acuna back until he's 100% recovered. I would, as a manager, I would do the same thing. It's like, go take a seat, relax, recover 100%, so we can use you, in the future instead of potentially compromising your future with us by forcing this to recover quicker. So
Right.
I'm all about the take downtime when you think just it's better to have the downtime and not need it than to need it and not have it. It's that old thing. And so I'm all about the Braves making the decision to put him out until he's fully recovered.
I hope they do that. The last I read was that they had not assigned him to a rehab assignment, aka they hadn't assigned him to a stint in the minors to sort of get his groove back.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is a sign that they're being cautious and they're still letting him heal and they're not letting him on the field either in the majors or in the minors.
Right.
So that's a good sign, I think. I hope they're going to be cautious and hope to see him back maybe after All-Star break later in the summer at some point.
Yeah, and I hope that this doesn't put too much of a damper on his card sales because man, there's some really nice pieces that have surfaced over the last couple of months. It's just a testament to like people's excitement to the product, how much is being opened and being listed and being available. So I've just seen so many cool pieces.
Oh yeah.
Superfractor autos, 1/1 platinums. I mean, just really cool stuff. So hopefully the market's still interested in responding to some of these listings in in an ambitious way. I don't know. I hope that he is turns into a great player for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean the hobby needs players like this, like Ohtani and Acuna. I mean, these are guys that really just get the new products flying off the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
We need guys like this. And
Totally.
I know both you and I, we've gone through periods where these sort of players haven't really existed. And the idea of going and spending your money on wax is just, it's hard to sort of wrap your head around because there's nobody in the products that you want to pull.
Right.
But I definitely went to my local Target looking for stuff to pull Ohtani. And it was fun, and that you need players like Acuna and Ohtani to drive the interest in the new products. And so I hope that he heals, and I hope that the hobby interest stays at a peak because it's really fun to watch right now.
Totally. And speaking of guys that are fun to watch, our next guy, Walker Buehler, the 2018 is his first year with the Dodgers. He's a pitcher, and he's being compared to guys like Tim Lincecum.
Yeah.
And so he's very dominant. 8 strikeouts, no walks in his performance against the Padres, and he has a productive arsenal with 4 different pitches. So he's he has that's a lot to play around with. I mean, there are guys in the 60s that just went off of one pitch. They spent their whole career mastering one pitch, and that's fine if you like to put all your eggs in one basket. But if you can master a couple of pitches, I think you become much more lethal as a pitcher. So, as his performance has transpired this season, it's translated into his market value for his cards. His 2018 Bowman Chrome Superfractor Auto was sold on May 17th for $4,000. That was an accepted offer. The actual listing, it's a strong sale. I mean, $4,000 is, we're getting up there. That's a big sale. So, you live in Los Angeles, so you have the chance to watch this guy if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him in person yet. It's certainly on my list to go see him at Dodger Stadium. I think that his debut could not have come at a better time for the Dodgers, who had a really rough start to the season, considering their payroll and their talent level. Kershaw has been on the DL twice now, which is not good.
Yeah, well.
So it's awesome to see this guy come out and just sort of carry the team whenever he's on the mound. I know he's sort of been in talks as being like their top prospect in the farm system, and it's fun to see, especially considering the Dodgers have a lot of other fun young talent. Cody Bellinger, Corey Seagers of the world, Jock Peterson, Justin Turner, all those guys, they're all young in their careers. So I hope that Walker Buehler can, stay in the rotation and stay in through the rest of the season, because despite the Dodgers' rough start, I'm sure they'll have a hot streak at some point, and they'll win the NL West. They're just too talented not to.
Wow,
so
making predictions.
It'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see Walker Buehler in the postseason, hopefully.
Yeah, I haven't really been following too much of this gentleman, but I was doing a little bit of research on some of the hot fellas, and this guy's Bowman Chrome stuff does pretty well right now. It's selling very well.
I'm sure it does.
And so I sort of take note of that. I mean, it's nice to see guys being compared to guys like Tim Lincecum, because I always watched Tim, back in 2010, and I always thought that his pitching style was very unique. And so it's cool to see some of the young guys being compared to a guy like Tim Lincecum, who's had a very productive career in his time and has managed to still stay pretty healthy. So good stuff. I'm glad we got to talk about Walker Buehler. I think he's one of those guys who's up and coming, and it'll be interesting to see how he pans out over this year and next year and in his career. Speaking of new guys that are coming up, we talked about this earlier in the podcast. Derek Rodriguez, Ivan Rodriguez's son, got called up to the San Francisco Giants, and he was originally an outfielder but converted to a pitcher in 2013. He has very few licensed cards to his name. He's, like I said, he's got a Panini Elite card with parallel, but it's just there's not a lot for him presently. So if he performs, we're hoping to see more card options for the collectors. And he earned his first win in his first career start. That's very significant.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Totally. So he's only 26, and his name is spelled Dereck, just in case you were curious. So don't get caught off guard if you see another Derek Rodriguez Superfractor or something online. It's a different spelling. It's a different guy. But it's kind of cool to see Ivan Rodriguez's son come up in professional baseball. A lot of the guys I grew up, collecting, their kids are now professionals. It's just cool to see that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more, but obviously Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Tony Gwynn
Dante
Jr.
Bichette's
You're right. Bo Bichette.
Tony Gwynn Jr. Dante Bichette's son, Bo Bichette, I
Right.
think is AAA level. So I'm kind of surprised to see that Derek Rodriguez didn't get more hobby love, just considering that his dad is a Hall of Famer. Maybe his scouting report wasn't very strong when he was younger, but well, he's in the bigs now, so I guess he has to make a name for himself on his own.
Yeah, and Raul Mondesi has a son now who's a professional
Oh, that's
ball
right.
player. Really cool to see all these guys that I collected growing up, and their kids are now taking the batons and carrying them forward. Really, really cool stuff. And some of them play better than others. And it's kind of cool to see this kind of transition into the new crop of guys, a new generation of fellas. So that's fun.
Yeah.
I hope he does well, and maybe we'll see some cool cards of him in the future. To close it out tonight, we're going to be talking about some birthdays. Fun. May was a great month for birthdays. Now I can't. We're not going to talk about every single birthday. That's a lot of birthdays. But we'll talk about 5 specific birthdays. How about that? That's a good number, 5.
5 works for me.
5 works. Bartolo Colon turns 45, or turned 45 on May 24th. Man,
Ooh, still pitching.
He's still freaking pitching, this guy. He came up in 95 with the Cleveland Indians, and his 95 Bowman's Best refractor was the card to get. I think still is. Among his rookie cards, that's the one to have. He was, quite a bit. His physique was more limber back then.
Whoa.
He's a little portly now, but he's fun. He's like a good dude. People love Bartolo Colon. He's just a good dude, and I'm glad that we still get to enjoy him on the mound. He's just a really fun fella. So he's 45. Happy birthday, Bartolo Colon.
He's got a. So last time we talked about the oldest pitcher.
Oh yeah. Well, the oldest pitcher was Satchel Paige.
Was Satchel Paige, sure.
Right. But if you if you don't count that last game he played in, if you want to end it, he was actually ended the when he was in his the 50s or whatever. His last
50s.
full run season, he was actually younger than Jamie Moyer was when Jamie Moyer retired.
Right.
And Jamie Moyer put in more in his last season than Satchel did before he hung it up in the 60s.
And Jamie was 49, right? Isn't that what we said in the last podcast?
Well, I can just pull this up right now. Let me check. It's funny. I remember thinking about this back when he was playing back in toward the end of his career. I was like, man, that guy is still pitching. And he finished his career when he was 49.
49.
And he played 10 games, whereas Satchel Paige, he actually he was 46 and 53 when he logged 57 games, right? So that's a pretty good chunk of a season. But he played one game in 65 at 58. So you could argue that he's technically the oldest fella to play to 58. But do you consider the one game does that count? I mean, he did pitch.
I think an entire season is what really sets you apart.
So if you want to look at that, then Jamie Moyer actually logged in a more aggressive last season than Satchel Paige by a small margin of 9 more games. But still.
Definitely.
And he holds the record for home runs and hits allowed at 522. Holds the league record. He's anybody. So yeah, he played till he was 49, Mr. Jamie Moyer.
Well, if Bartolo can make it another 4 years, I'd be very happy. He's fun to watch. He's sort of been getting lit up recently.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's always going to be a small market, low budget team with a need for pitching, and if Bartolo is not looking for a lot of money, he might be able to make it to 49. I don't really know. But
I hope he plays until he can't play anymore physically.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of looking at it.
It's great to see a guy that's pursuing longevity to that capacity. He's made his money.
Oh yeah, he's just playing because he loves it.
Yeah, and so it's but he's been shuffled around a lot. Like he's
Oh,
been on a lot of teams.
he
Uh,
probably he's probably up there with the record for most teams played for, which I don't know the record, but
Matt
I would
Matt
guess Cologne.
Matt Stairs holds that record.
Oh, really? I thought it was Rex Hudler, but Matt Stairs is
Matt
the
Stairs holds the record of most teams played for. In fact, I knew a guy in LA who went to high school with Matt Stairs. He like used to know him. And
oh,
when he was on the Montreal Expos, this is a funny story. The team or somebody said you should get bigger, like build out, fill out. And my buddy was saying that Matt Stairs, what he did, he took that as okay, I need to gain weight, so he went to McDonald's for like every day until he gained the weight he needed. So he just became fat.
nice.
But Matt Stairs has been shuffled around a lot of teams, and he played till he was 43 and retired in 2011. I remember when he came up in '92. That was like, he was like one of the big prospects. He and like Pat Kelly and like
Yeah.
some of these other guys that were, they kind of faded out into obscurity later in their careers. But I think Phil Plantier was in '91. He was one of those other guys that was coming up with Todd Van Poppel. And gosh, there were so many guys in that '91, '92 scene. But Matt Stairs is the record holder. And, I don't really care if guys get shuffled around as long as they're like entertaining, like they're producing results for a team. Like that's what's most important. And all this other side jargon is just fun entertainment value stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bartolo Colon, happy birthday. You're 45, and I hope that you're able to pitch and play in a major league level for a lot longer. He's up for free agency next year, though, so hopefully he can find a team
Yes,
in
he is.
2019. Moving on, 526, May 26th, Travis Lee. Huge phenom prospect from 1997. Turns 43. And he actually, gosh, I remember 97 going to a card show, and his Bowman and Bowman Chrome cards were like the cards to have, right? They were huge cards, and I ended up getting a raw, just standard 97 Bowman card of his and being really happy to have it. And just knowing the hobby was just going crazy for Travis Lee stuff. He had a couple of okay years. I think his stat is that he was the first person to hit a home run for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
The first person.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. So he came up with the Arizona Diamondbacks and got shuffled around toward later in his career with the Phillies, and he spent some time with the Devil Rays and the Yankees. But I think his most productive years were with the Arizona Diamondbacks when he was coming up. He only played for 9 years and retired when he was 31. And now he's, to my understanding, he's just he's a dad and he enjoys it.
Just
So
a normal guy.
yeah, but that's really, he's a guy I collected a little bit before I left the hobby in '98.
Oh
And when
yeah.
I got back in, I was like, oh, let's see what the Travis Lee market's like, and it's like non-existent. So it's like, but I'm not gonna PC hit Lee stuff. I just think it's kind of interesting to see how how scouting has changed. It's much more analytics based now, and it wasn't in '97, at least not to the degree it is today. And so, who's to say he would have been scouted in today's market? I don't know. I mean, these are just some questions I think about from time to time. But cool stuff. He is 43 as of last month on the 26th. The following day, on May 27th, Frank Thomas and Jeff Bagwell turned 50. They were born on the same day. They are the same age, and they had very impressive careers, and they're both Hall of Famers. Really,
That's awesome.
really cool stuff.
I did not know they were both born on the same day.
Isn't
That's
that
cool.
rad? And they both played in the same era of players, right?
Yes, they were both extremely dominant players.
Very
in the
dominant.
Same era.
Very dominant. Bagwell is a career Astro. He's one of those guys that stay with the whole team, the team his whole career. And I just always am impressed by that. Like Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn. There are a lot of guys that stayed with these, the career tenures with these teams. And so
Yeah.
really cool. The Big Hurt and Jeff Bagwell both turned 50 on May 27th. Happy birthday to both of them. On May 28th, Craig Kimbrell turned 30. Craig Kimbrell, man, what a guy. He's got this like really unique wind-up, but he's dominant.
Yeah.
He's dominant. So can't give the guy a hard time.
He's a closer. He's sort of a classic sort of intimidating guy. I think that's what the whole windup is about. He's trying to get in your head
Right.
in the ninth inning.
Yes.
So,
But he's very decorated as a pitcher, and he's only been doing
yeah,
this for 9 years. I mean, he's 6-time All-Star already. So that's incredible. It's just incredible.
30 years old. I mean, I think in the closer role, if you're 30, you could probably go another 6-7 years. So,
Right, because they're not
hopefully.
overused. They're just at the tail end of the games. And
Right.
I like the concept of the closer, and I didn't really become familiar or fond of it until Mariano Rivera.
Yeah.
And then again with Brian Wilson. Like just very entertaining position to watch. Of all the pitching, the
Yep.
closer is the most entertaining to me. Just to me, in my opinion, I just prefer to watch that end of the game. Like, all right, guys, we've made it 8 innings. Let's close this out. Done. Bring in the lethal pitcher that just can dominate. And I just really think that that's a very cool scenario of like the secret weapon. Bring him out when you need him and just use him for that short time. Be done with it.
Yeah, it's fun. I think we haven't really seen anybody like a Mariano until now. We have Aroldis Chapman,
Oh yeah, he's great.
and Craig Kimbrell's not quite at the Chapman level, but he's definitely dominant. But yeah, I think back to the Marianos of the world and the Trevor Hoffmans of the world. These guys just sort of had this like cult of personality around them. They were just these monsters. Like once they're in the game, if you're the opposing team, you have no chance.
It's over.
And you might as well just turn the TV off because there's nothing's going to happen. So yeah, happy birthday, Craig Kimbrell. I hope you can keep saving those games for several more years.
Gosh, yeah, and who knows, maybe Hall of Fame down the line. I mean, if he stays healthy and continues to be productive, this is the kind of stuff I like to think about. Like guys that I'm watching now or reading about now.
Yes.
Become Hall of Fame's. I mean, in the '90s, we were packed to the brim with Hall of Fame talent. I mean, I think about that sometimes. Like, man, '80s and '90s, we had so much talent in that time. Just every team had incredible talent. And now we seem to have a lot of talent, but then we seem to have guys that the longevity is difficult to maintain over the course of time. Now we still have a lot of great, talented hitters and pitchers right now that are Hall of Fame bound. I mean, certainty if we stay healthy and continue to produce at the elite level that they are. But I just think back on those like 2 decades and like thinking about all those guys that all just eventually made it in. And, all the guys that grew up collecting, like a good chunk of them made it into the Hall of Fame. So it's fun to watch that. And I hope that Craig can continue being dominant in his career and continues to produce as a very effective closer. So happy 30th birthday to Craig Kimbrell. Good stuff, man. Do you have any final thoughts, Mr. Ryan Daly?
No final thoughts. I guess just get well soon, Mr. Acuna, and definitely get well soon, Mr. Ohtani.
Jeez, yes, please.
I
think when guys get hurt that are highly collectible, and they go away for a time to recover, it hurts the hobby. That's why it's total bummer for me. It's like I obviously want them to be healthy just for them to be healthy, but I also want them to be healthy because it's helpful for the hobby for them to be healthy.
Yes,
and maybe
definitely.
I'm being selfish by saying that, but at the same time, the hobby needs them just like the sport needs them. Like we need them to remain healthy for more than just, their health impacts of other markets, and so I want to see the both of them become 100% sooner than later.
Yeah, well, the Ohtani craze, I haven't felt that kind of craze since the Strasburg era.
Right.
And not even like the Trout Harper era was definitely insane for the hobby. But the Strasburg stuff sort of transcended a lot of craziness that happens in the hobby.
Mm.
And I think the Ohtani stuff that we've witnessed this year is comparable to the Strasburg stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so exciting. And it's sort of a bummer that it only seems to happen about once every 10 years.
It's rare.
But, that's just sort of how it is. It takes these sort of special talents to drive that kind of market. And, get well soon, buddy.
Seriously, right? If you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, please, have a
please hurry up and get well.
I don't know what it's going to take. But Yeah.
Hurry up. But I think about celebrated like super build up, crazy buzz player prospect marketing that took place with Strasburg and then took place again, 8 years later with Ohtani. These things are highly, I guess, touted at this level, because they're so rare, right? Like before Ohtani, like you were saying, I too hadn't experienced anything like this before, and since Steven Strasburg, there have been every year. There's always a guy. Last year was Judge and Bellinger, but it took some time for them to like, oh my gosh, it's Judge and Bellinger. There wasn't like years of buildup. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's like Mike Trout too. There weren't years of buildup, and then oh my gosh, Mike Trout developed and it became amazing like a year in. But people are buying and transacting for his rookie cards at just these nominal values back then in 2011.
Yeah.
So
Well, Strasburg and Ohtani, their stuff was selling before they were even proven talents.
right. And I mean, granted, the Strasburg Superfractor was pulled at a much better time, a month before he makes the major league debut.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Whereas the Ohtani Super was pulled way late, like well into his first year, and sadly, the day he gets sent down to the DL. But
Right.
so I will say the Strasburg marketing for the Superfractor was much more significant because it was pulled and found and marketed and they're discussed on the blogosphere and everything else. But the Bowman Chrome Superfractor Ohtani, nobody had an image of it until June 8th, and so we had weeks and weeks of no Superfractor blog, and we talked about like the bounty from blowout cards and increase the bounty number, and but it's just a different set of circumstances. But certainly sales have been incredible on his other pieces. And so, but yeah, going back to it, the Strasburg craze was the last time I remember it being this hyped, and he had a similar set of circumstances happen that, he pitched a few games and then he gets Tommy John surgery. It's not dissimilar from Ohtani.
Right, that's true.
It's crazy to think about, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us in this podcast, the Radicards podcast, and Radicards.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, enjoy collecting.
If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.